My name is Michael Mulgrew. I'm the president of the United Federation of Teachers, and I am just here to really open up a program today, a program that some folks, teachers in New York City who have been going through all sorts of things for the last couple of years, and no matter what the challenge was, the teachers have met it. Even this past week when people see all the things that are going on, every school remains safe. The teachers always do what needs to be done in terms of keeping the children safe, and also at the same time making sure their learning and development continues. So in my role, I get to answer this question all the time. How are the children doing, and what do the teachers need? Well, I think it's better if you hear it from the teachers. If you hear it from the people who have been with the children throughout this pandemic and continue to do the work despite all the challenges, but it's time for people to listen to the people who are doing the work. And that's why this is called Listen Up. The reality is. And that's why we're here this afternoon. So I want to thank everyone for being here, and I want to thank this panel and everyone for taking their time to do it, and give them a round of applause for taking this on. And before we get started, I want to give just this morning, we had a horrendous incident where a teacher was attacked in her school at 7 o'clock this morning, and her colleague, Mr. Nash, came to her defense with the security guard, Mr. Garcia, and stopped a really bad thing from happening. People were hurt, but again, I want to thank them, because that's what we do in the schools every day. No matter what happens, we make sure that we keep our children safe, and then we keep the schools running at all times. So I just want to give them a special shout out. So as we move this program along, this is really a simple idea, but very complicated question. The teachers of New York City are, we're in a transition right now. We have a new chancellor, and we really like the fact that we have a new chancellor who's out. He's talking to teachers and talking to parents. And our role as teachers has always been the same thing. We want to make sure that each child in our class gets the best education. We want to take care of them. We want our school to be the best school. But for too long, for way too long, it has been only on the backs of the teachers and the school communities to try to make that reality happen. And we are now reaching out and saying again, we're coming through a pandemic. It is time. We are saying we want to work with everyone. We want to work with the parents. We want to work with the elected officials. We want to work with the Department of Ed, and we want to work with the mayor. We want our chancellor to be the most successful chancellor of all time. But the only way we know that's actually going to happen is if we're really doing the work of supporting the people who are with our children each and every day. So that is why we're here this afternoon, to listen up, and the reality is this is what we're going to need. And then at the end of this program, we'll have some time for people to ask some questions. But remember, when we ask questions, let's ask a question. That means we don't need a speech first. Okay? So I want to thank someone who is in the classroom. Up until just recently, she agreed to be our moderator, the chair of the City Council Education Committee, Ms. Rita Joseph, who was literally a teacher up until December 23rd of this year. So thank you for moderating. And again, give them all a big round of applause.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rita Joseph, a teacher of 22 years. So it is an honor to sit with my colleagues today. I am you. So, and once an educator, always an educator. This is a conversation I've always had with myself, always had it with colleagues. What is it that we need to do as soldiers on the ground? We are soldiers. And this is an army of teachers who show up. We show up for everything. We're there for everyone. So now we want you to hear our voices and our concerns and take them into consideration when you think about policy, curriculum, and all that affect the daily lives of our teachers, my colleagues. So my colleagues, I would love for you to introduce yourself. I'll start off with Siobhan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Siobhan Frazier, and I'm a kindergarten teacher at PS 184, the Newport School.
Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Lempesis. I teach 4th grade at PS 111 in Hell's Kitchen.
Good afternoon. My name is Shirley St. Louis, and I teach 3rd to 5th grade special education, District 75.
My name is Chanel Quintero, and I am a centrally funded IEP teacher from PS 35 in the Bronx.
And Jason, we'll start with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jason Petch. I teach at the Jonas Bronk Academy in the Bronx.
My name is Laisha White. I teach government and economics at Brooklyn Preparatory High School in Williamsburg.
Hi, I'm Kasamira Wildeman. I teach first grade ICT at PS 567 in Parkchester in the Bronx.
Hi everyone, I'm Genevieve Quinones. I'm a pre-K teacher in a standalone pre-K center in the Bronx.
Thank you for joining us. We're here today because too often teachers are left out of the equation. When making policy decisions, we brought 8 incredible educators here today to share what they think education needs. We're facing an educator shortage that looks like it may only be getting worse in the coming years. Our educators has a lot to say in regards to quality of life when it comes to teacher retention and other ideas on how to improve staffing. And what are some of your thoughts on this topic? I'm going to start with Jenna.
Yeah, a huge reflection I've had over the last 2 years has been around class size. When I started at PS 111 in, I believe, 2018, I started my school year with 36 students in the 4th grade, which is obviously above the legal limit. We eventually got it down to 32. This year, I have 19, and that is because of folks leaving in the city after the pandemic, but the effect has been transformative. Like, I think any of us could consider what it would be like to have to do the hard work of learning to read, to write, to do math, to recover in a social, emotional way from the pandemic, in a classroom with 31 other children who all have varied needs in terms of language, in terms of learning, in terms of just attention from their teacher. The difference has been dramatic, and we've even seen some students in my classroom go up 1.5 to 2 grade levels in reading. I think because of all the individualized attention and love and support they get every day. We want our classrooms to be these magical, intimate places where kids are hearing the how is your little brother? Oh, auntie got a new apartment, that's awesome. And feeling that deep trust with their teacher that can allow them to be vulnerable and learn. And I believe a smaller class size can absolutely do that for our students and make the job far more sustainable.
Thank you. Siobhan, your thoughts?
Absolutely. Let me paint a picture for you. In kindergarten, as well as in pre-K, we set the foundation for all of you sitting in this room today. Each and every one of you were impacted by a nursery school, a preschool, and or a kindergarten teacher. In the classroom, we want to promote equity so that we can give each child exactly what they need. However, we are often faced with a dilemma. In a class of 25 children and 1 teacher, particularly in kindergarten, where we're starting the races off for reading, writing, critical thinking, and other skills that are needed to compete in today's world, there's a dilemma in how do I divide myself amongst all 25 children. Mm-hmm. You have children who are coming in that need extra support, so your heart and your mind and your planning goes to support those students. But then on the opposite side of the spectrum, what about the children who come in with a great deal of skills, but they need a push? Mm-hmm. They shouldn't stay where they are. They should be pushed to their full potential. But if I have a class of 25 and I need to individualize lessons and small group instruction, who do I give more of my time to? The child that needs that rope to be pulled up to be on grade level, or the child who needs that push to possibly go above grade level? Too often we have to fight with ourselves on who do we service more. With smaller class sizes, that eliminates that struggle. Just like my colleague here, prior to the pandemic, the cap for a kindergarten classroom is 25 children to 1 teacher. This year, I have 18 children. Instead of having small group instruction with 5 children, I could have it with 3. And just like my colleague here, the amount of growth that my children have experienced from September to now is amazing. The love they have for reading. They're challenging me to challenge them more because I'm able to cover more content this year than I've had in the past when I've had more children. So yes, we do need to decrease class size, not only for us as educators, but more importantly, for the children and families we serve each and every day.
Thank you for that. Class size matter. It does. Shirley?
Interesting. I wanted to share with you guys my experience commuting here today. I left school and I was nervous. I was anxious. I thought to myself, oh man, this has been a real hectic week for New York. And I said, maybe I should just go home because I'm so nervous. I don't know what's going to happen in my commute. I'm nervous. And then I said to myself, this is interesting because this is exactly the experience teachers have every day. Because what I decided to do was that I showed up. And I didn't show up for myself, I showed up for my students. Because I know that they need to have someone represent them when it comes to making sure that their experience every day in school is the one that they deserve. They deserve a quality education. And part of that is allowing them to enter a facility that does not resemble a correctional facility. The facility should not be chipping paint. They should not have stained walls. We should not be forced as educators to cover up holes on the floor or place placemats and duct tape just to cover up the uneven floor. As educators, we need to have a safe space for our students. We need to have a space where students can go and have pride when they leave our schools. We need to create that because we promote this quality education. We promote, making sure that every student receive education. When the pandemic happened, we quickly reopened the doors because we said that we wanted to create a safe haven for our students. But when they re-entered the building, they came back to the same space. Broken furniture, uneven chairs, the desks are shaking. And as a teacher, of course, I want the best experience for my students. So what I do, I make sure I mask this experience. So I mask these faults because I don't want my students to feel like they're entering a classroom where they're not valued. And as an educator, it stresses me out as well because I'm worried about providing them with the quality lessons and instructions and the small group instructions and making sure that they receive the services that they need. And then at the same time, I'm enhancing my classroom, but I'm also renovating my classrooms. And I need to make sure that the DOE is supporting us and ensuring that the facility represents exactly what the DOE promotes. It needs to represent the students that students that they care for, and it also needs to represent the educators that they bring into the schools. So I need to know as a team, overall, that you guys are supporting us as much as we're supporting the students that we all say that we're out in the community supporting. So we need to know that you guys have our back. So that's my take on it.
As the chair of education, I have your back from
you.
day one. Jason, I would love to hear your thoughts.
So, the theme that I wanted to bring to this team of really amazing, committed, passionate educators was a theme that I keep hearing in my own context up in the Bronx, which is the work, especially after the pandemic, is not getting any less. But the hands that are able to do the work are not sufficient. So I want to talk about capacity. Our limiting factor in my school is not financial resources. It's not a building. It's literally the adults in the room that are trained and can do the work. The staffing issue is the biggest issue facing New York City public education right now. It was bad before the pandemic, and the pandemic has exacerbated trends that are, quite frankly, on the ground, alarming. We're going to talk a lot about this. You're going to hear a lot about this theme from other people on this panel, so I won't monopolize the floor. But I just want to share one small story from my day today. I had a teacher who I was actually a mentee of mine, and I stopped around lunchtime, and as I was running to and fro and trying to get a million things done during my few moments not in front of a class, I asked her how her day went. or how her day was going. I could tell that something was really troubling her, and she brought up this particular student who exhibits learning differences and really requires a great deal of additional support. And this student was just really heavy on her heart, and heavy not just on her heart, but many of us had really been meeting and going through the various protocols to provide additional support to the student in order that this particular student could access the curriculum. This teacher had an interaction that had really frustrated her. She was visibly shaken and was asking me about the status of the meeting that we had and the protocols that we were going through. And I was telling her, well, it's in process, but as you know, there's a lot of cases going on. There are a lot of people that we're worried about right now. And then I realized that what we were talking about was a lack of human resources to do the work. So many times I have this conversation over and over and over again, where the limiting factor is the fact that there just aren't enough hours in the day, there aren't enough minutes in the day, and there aren't enough hands to get this work done. And it is impacting our students at almost every level of the day. And it was just, I just today, like I said, I just stepped back and was thinking about how the staffing problem, particularly affecting our special education team at my school, is only going to get worse with time, as we sort of are already preparing for some staff departures that we know about on the horizon. Teachers are getting burnt out because we are asking them to do more work than they are able to do within the time that we give them to do it. And this is one of the most important things that I think we can do, and you guys in this room can do as policymakers, as decision makers, both with all the levers of power that you have at your disposal to get more teachers into our classrooms to fix this problem. There is no reason in a city with our resources that we should be having the kinds of staffing problems that we are in our schools. And I'll yield the floor, but I definitely will look forward to sharing a little bit more about some of those issues.
Thank you so much, Jason. Laisha?
Yeah, so I just want to kind of, everyone's brought up such amazing things. I too am lucky to work at a school that has amazing resources. So the lack of resources that I constantly am faced with is human resources, right? I'm one person. If there were 5 more of me in a room, it would make work a lot easier. And when I say it would make work a lot easier, I don't mean paperwork and stuff like that, although that is a part of teaching that I think we often forget, is the grading, the reading of data so we could adjust our curriculum accordingly. But it's also my ability to create those connections that we spoke about earlier. So something that I think is really important is I'll just share a story. So I became a teacher at 25. I was originally a business major, but I always knew when I was in college that I kind of always had a passion for working with children. So I went through the Teaching Fellows program. I had an amazing opportunity there, great supports. I went to Hunter, and I landed at this great school that I've been at for 9 years. And what I found is that teaching to me is a privilege, right? You could put anyone in a classroom. Any human could be a body in the classroom. Any human can read curriculum. Any human can grade a worksheet. But to be a teacher, it's really important that we remember the human side, right? Those ability to make connections, the ability to pull out of students things they don't see in themselves. Also, as a high school teacher, I teach seniors, so I really take it an extra burden on top of that myself to say, this is the last stop for adulthood. So let's mirror these scenarios you might face. Let's see, what do you want to do? What are the skills you need for that? Whether it's taking the sanitation exam at in a couple of months, how can I prepare you for that, even though you're in my government class? Or if it's going to Wharton and being in a completely different space and dealing with imposter syndrome. So there are various different levels of kids, just like in pre-K and kindergarten, and the need to be responsive to that is really important. And I think as a teacher and as taking on that responsibility, that privilege, I'm in a space in my life where I'm kind of wondering, like, how much longer can I do this without being less of a person for them? So creating that balance between how can I become a mother, but also be the person in the classroom that they need? How can I keep that evenly? Because I don't know at the current state with the amount that we take on, which is amazing. I love my job and I would kill me to give it up, but I don't know how I could go into another chapter of my life and also be not just a human in a classroom, but an advocate for kids.
That's a lot of unpacking. Thank you for that. Kasamira, I didn't hear from you yet. Please share.
Yeah, thank you. I want to talk about a pandemic we're having right now, and it's not the COVID pandemic, it's mental health. We are having, and have had before COVID, huge, concerning problems with mental health in all students at all ages, at all the schools in New York City and across the country. I mean, educators feel like over 50% of their students are struggling with mental health issues, and only 20% of educators feel capable of handling those issues. We really need more counselors. And when I say more counselors, I mean a lot more. Like, we need one counselor for every class. And I know that's like a huge ask. I know we already spend more money on education than maybe anyone in the world per student. But given the needs of our students, I mean, 75% of New York City students live in poverty. We have to meet them where they are because so many students right now are in survival mode and they are in no place to be able to learn. I have first grade students who are coming in, probably 5 students a day who are in crisis, who are maybe on the floor crying uncontrollably, who are needing to move around the whole school and cannot stop, who need to discuss for possibly hours what's going on in their home life. And I cannot meet those needs because I have 30 kids in my class and I have to meet the needs of the academics so that first graders will be able to read and do math and all the things that I have been trained in. I can't also do all the social emotional needs that they need. And so we need these counselors to be there, to be able to pull students who are in crisis in sessions every day if they need it. Because if we can't give them that, we can't get to the learning part. We're just in survival.
Rita, may I chime in?
Sure, please.
So one of the other things that's crucial to everything we've just discussed is supporting our paraprofessionals. They are really the unsung heroes of our profession, and they do so much more of the heavy lifting than anybody knows about. We're at a point where teachers have access to a world of professional development. We have access to tons of training that are given by professionals, but our paras do not. And our paras are with children, as Cassie described, that are coming in crisis. Mm-hmm. They were with our children in crisis before the pandemic, but I can't even begin to describe to you what a typical day looks like for paraprofessionals in my school. We have children now who are triggered by the asking of them to sit in a seat. We have children who are triggered by asking them to pick up a pencil and write longer than just 1 or 2 words. These are things that were common beforehand, but they are absolutely exacerbated by this pandemic and by the lack of structure that took place while we were trying to figure the world out. Part of quality of life and retention is retaining our paraprofessionals and supporting them professionally and supporting them with livable wages. They're not required to discuss anything with us, but they become family. So you begin to understand their living conditions and what they make and how they make it, and you start to hear of all the side hustles that they have just to make ends meet. Mm-hmm. And for the bulk of the profession that does a ton of heavy lifting when it comes to toileting our children, making sure they're safe as they ambulate amongst the building, making sure that our children who require emotional support are de-escalated and returned to the classroom in a good amount of time, we need to do something better for them. Otherwise, in addition to the mass exodus of teachers, we're going to start losing people who are our right-hand man.
Thank you for uplifting paraprofessionals. They do play a very important role in the classroom. Now I'm going to pivot on to another conversation that's very important to me, and I talk this often. Special education. I always say we can never cut corners. So a major issue that comes up over and over from my colleagues was the lack of services for students who needed them. Key support. Could you talk about your experiences with this and ideas on how we can improve? Chanel can start for me.
Sure. So it really boils back down to our staffing issue. We have broken systems in place where we have professionals looking for loopholes so that we can reduce sheer numbers just because we don't have the manpower to service our children. And one of the things that I frequently find myself arguing with borough professionals and district professionals about is the child fine mandate under the IDEA law. And this is a mandate that requires us to screen children for learning disabilities. And the only way that we are not allowed to provide services if their parents ask for an evaluation is if we have conclusive evidence that they do not have a disability. But frequently, there is something called a parent-principal agreement that comes into play. And this is a negotiation option for parents and principals. And frequently, the topic of absences comes up, when really, it shouldn't even be a thing. Our children, starting from the ground level of pre-K all the way through high school, should get the services that they need in order to continue. The biggest issue that we have is once these children get their mandates, we don't have the staff. I have in my school building right now, we have whole classrooms without special education teachers. I'm essentially funded IEP teacher, but I'm doing the job of 4 different people. I do sets, I do generalized remedial reading instruction for general education. I am the crisis support and behavior specialist. I'm a special ed coach, and I'm pushing into classrooms that don't have the teacher that they need. Now, we've posted for these jobs, but there's no headhunting that goes on throughout the school year to make sure that these roles are actually fulfilled with somebody who is capable and qualified. So then this leads us into a spinoff. We deal with the mental health issues because our children do not have the support that they need to access the curriculum, whether it's general education or remedial. The other issue that we have is that our related service providers and E&L providers do not have a cap on the number of students that they have to service. The only cap they have is the 6.5 hours of the school day that we have. Most of the time, we forego lunch periods, we forego prep periods to make sure that we're meeting the mandates of students who need our support the most. As of last year, we had 485 students in our school. 49% of those students required some level of special education service, whether it was special education itself or it was an E&L service. So 238 kids in my building were split between maybe a staff of 10. We only have 3 E&L providers to service well over 150 kids because most of our special education children also receive E&L services. With the varying levels of E&L status comes the varying levels of mandates. And there is no way that 3 E&L providers can service children to make sure that they are making the most of their education and safely enjoying school. It also comes down to some of the solutions that we have at hand. When we do not have enough service providers, we issue RSA letters. Basically, it's an authorization for parents to find a provider outside of the school building so that their children can go outside of school hours to receive their services. That is not free, appropriate public education. And in District 9, which is historically one of the poorest congressional districts in the United States, it is nearly impossible for our families to get their students to these services. So we as teachers are then throwing on another hat. We're meeting with speech and language providers. We're meeting with occupational therapists. We're meeting with psychologists and counselors. How do I do what you do during sessions while I'm teaching? How do I make up the amount of hours that you're unable to provide because you have a caseload of 100 students? How do I do this? And at some point, we have to step back and look at the fact that this is not equitable. Issuing an RSA letter in some of our neediest districts doesn't do anything for anyone. We need the actual people in our building. And one of the ways that I have tormented my administration about is partnering up with local colleges to get student clinicians in to do their hours in our school building. Not just because they need the hours, not just because our children need the support, but to show them that working somewhere in the South Bronx, where I am, is not scary. and that our kids are worth it, and that they would love our culture and the way that we are and everything we have to offer. So it's looking more at creating a sustainable flow of teachers coming into the profession as we have teachers retiring, as we have teachers moving on to greener pastures, and that is one of the ways that we can start to address the lack of staffing that we have when it comes to not being able to provide these mandates.
Thank you. Wow. This is what our educators do. We show up and we show out. Thank you so much. Shirley.
Thank you. As my colleague Chanel said, I mean, she said it well. I can't even, say anything that she has not said. But one thing I will say as a special education teacher is that I walk into my classroom every day, and I don't only walk in as a teacher, I walk in as an occupational therapist. I walk in as a physical therapist, and I am not qualified in any of those. But I know that my students need that support, so what I do again, I show up. So I do my research, I buy resources that's not provided. I go above and beyond to ensure that my students receive that support. And I need to know, and we need to know that as a special education district 75 alone, we need more resources. We need more support. We need more staff. We need more presence. We don't have that right now. We're struggling to get people in the building, and part of that goes back to quality of life. When you're walking into the building, a lot of people are just, they're turned off. They don't return back. And our students are the ones suffering the most, but the quality of life, the teachers stressing, trying to find out how I'm gonna make up for the absence of occupational therapists, how I'm gonna make up for a speech therapist that doesn't have room for my students. We as teachers, we're expected to come in and provide the lesson plans and provide the instructions, and then when you turn around, you're doing more than that, especially in District 75. So we need to know that the DOE is going to support us in providing that resource and helping us find ways to come up with the resources that we lack. And like my colleague Chanel said, the letters that we're sending home to parents to ask them to go in the community and figure it out is not helping our students at all. Not one of my students' parents was able to go out into the community and get services. And one of my parents who did reach out to get an occupational therapist in September, this month received a call in April to say, okay, we can provide occupational therapists. It's April.
Correct.
It doesn't serve.
So it doesn't meet the needs of the IEP as well. So you're out of compliance.
Out of compliance.
Already out of compliance. Wow.
Can I jump in on that as well?
Sure.
I think the other issue goes to as well, teacher preparation. And that also goes back to staffing and having qualified people leading our neediest classrooms. Many times we have a lot of teacher preparation programs. There's a lot of different pathways, as they're called, to get into the classroom. However, oftentimes you have some of the greenest, newest teachers who don't always have the educational backing and student teaching experience working with our children who need us the most, working in District 75, working in special education classrooms, and don't have that experience, and they struggle. Where is their extra support in training and mentoring longer than a year?
Correct.
They need ongoing mentoring. If we're going to take someone who went through a summer program and is now given their own classroom, sometimes an ICT classroom, which is a team teaching, sometimes a self-contained classroom, sometimes a classroom in District 75, and then they're floundering all year, barely holding on by the skin of their teeth, and then they leave after a year or two, and we're wondering where are they going. We wonder where's their passion. We say, oh, they don't love the children. It's not that. We love our children. We wake up thinking about our babies. I call all my children my babies.
Same here.
We wake up thinking about our babies. We drink our coffee thinking about our babies. We scroll social media thinking about our babies. We go to sleep, waking up at 2 a.m. thinking about our babies. However, we have to think about who are the adults that we are placing in these classrooms. Do they have the proper training and experience to lead these classrooms and lead them with fidelity? And if they do not, what supports are we putting in place to support them? What kind of foundation are we giving them? And what kind of scaffolds? We are constantly being told, differentiate, differentiate, differentiate. Meet your students where they are. but are we meeting the teachers where they are? That's what we need as well.
And if I could just add on to that as well.
Real quick, go ahead.
Okay. I think that if we want to keep new teachers and we want to retain new teachers, I mean, we have a really high rate of teachers leaving in general in New York City schools, 25%. And for first-year teachers, it's 18%. The national average is 10%. We need to have new teachers not be alone in a classroom. Like, I remember my first year as a teacher 5 years ago. I had multiple people tell me they didn't think I was going to make it. Like, I was crying every day. I didn't know what to do. I mean, and look at me now. I'm doing amazing. But at the time, it was the worst thing I've ever been through because I didn't know what to do. And I had other teachers who got paired in an ICT classroom, and they felt so supported with another teacher in the classroom with them. They were like, oh, I learned it. I knew it. I was competent and capable. And then when I'm alone, I know what to do.
Teacher support, I hear that a lot. Now we're going to move on to something called autonomy. Use the value expertise of teachers, which is something I think we lack a lot. Educators spoke about the lack of teacher autonomy. What are your thoughts on how much more should teacher autonomy improve? How can it improve our education system? I'm going to start with Genevieve.
Yep. So teacher autonomy goes hand in hand together with the students' autonomy. You cannot expect children to be independent and autonomous if teachers are not provided that right. And we know we have been to school, and I know that there are different pathways, but we all, I am sure, research and read research and have our own philosophy and know our children the best. And so when we're in the classroom, we need to be trusted that we know what we're doing for those children. I teach pre-K, which, people say, oh, pre-K, oh, how cute. Well, yeah, they are cute, they're adorable, for sure. But teachers know the child development, and they know what's best for the children at that stage. And it's not getting ready to take a third grade ELA test or math test, but that's the pressure that we feel. And so that's the pressure that goes down all the way to pre-K. And with, the pressure to teach academics, and they have to learn the letters and the numbers, but they're 3 and 4 years old when they come in, right? And what they need, and the teachers know that, is to learn through play. And that's how they learn. And that's how the brain develops. The play develops the brain in so many different ways. It teaches them to regulate their emotions. It teaches them to, all the social skills that they're going to need, sharing, taking turns, advocating for themselves. That's through play that they learn this. And if we leave them alone a little bit, now, I'm not saying that in the classroom I just let them play. Not at all. It's, we prepare the classroom and we're with the kids on the floor with them, constantly speaking with them, because we know that's what they need. They need to hear the oral language, especially for English language learners. It's that with us that they, that they develop that. It's at that age. And it's also at that age that the brain that's developing is the social emotional brain, let's call it. And that's what we should be focusing on. The academics will come. Our kids are bright. I see it every single day. They ask questions, or they answer questions, or they do things that I'm in awe every day, observing them and talking to them. So we need to feel like we know what we're doing, and we need the that trust that we might not feel, because we're thrown like, here is this curriculum, here is that curriculum, say it like this. Well, no, we're dealing, like Siobhan was saying, and Laisha, with human beings. they are 3 and 4 years old, but they're human beings with their own emotions and things that they deal with at home and in the classroom, and that's who we take care of, not brains that we pour letters and numbers into. So we need to feel trusted. I don't know how that happens, but
Thank you, Jen. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think more than anything, I just want to make a general argument for centering teachers when we drive policy. So I will call myself out. I was a Teach for America recruit back in 2012. I thought I knew all there was to know about being a teacher. I'd read the books. I'd seen season 4 of The Wire. I don't know. I was like, I've got it. There is nothing like being in the classroom day in and day out with your 20, 25, 30, 32 kids. There just is not. It is an entirely different living, breathing, constantly changing and evolving set of relationships and requirements that we navigate each day. I would compel each and every one of you, I might get in trouble with my principal, visit, like reach out to a teacher in your district. Come sit in our classroom for a day, visit us. My kids would love to talk to you about homework and recess and what they would prefer there. So I just want to put out there, when I left the panel, our prep last week, I went home to my fiance and I said, the answers are in this room. Like, I looked at my colleagues, the wisdom and the knowledge they brought is in this room, and I think centering teachers and allowing us that autonomy to drive policy is just critical. I also would love to talk about the role of assessments in negating teacher autonomy, I would say. So right now, just telling you about what's happening in my classroom and across the city, we've obviously got the state exams in ELA and math. I don't know much about high school, but there's regents, I hear. We also have, as a response to the pandemic, the MAP assessment, which is a computer-based math assessment. We have the Acadience as well in elementary school to test our children's reading skills. My school hosts the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project curriculum, so we're expected to do running record assessments for comprehension, as well as unit assessments in reading and math. Some weeks we're assessing more than we're teaching. Some weeks we're assessing more than our teaching. And I think like we all agree our kids deserve more, and they can learn more when the teacher is the center of driving the instruction based on lean, narrow assessments that are both qualitative and quantitative. It might not be hard and fast data, that's okay. A lot of the suburbs rely on more qualitative data as well, and a lot of the kids there thrive. I think our children can as well. The last thing I want to end with, I wasn't going to say this, but it's stuck in my head all week. I listened to a podcast, it's called Code Switch, if anyone listens. And it was the one about the Lakota school, did you hear that one?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a school on Standing Rock Reservation that teachers are starting. Because the school serving the Lakota children in the area were not serving them well at all. And one thing that the teacher said that I can't get out of my head was that in her language, she's a native Lakota speaker, children wouldn't be referred to as children or students, they'd be referred to as the sacred ones. And she said that as soon as she started calling them the sacred ones and not her students, her entire mode of being in the classroom changed. I call on us all to remember our children are the sacred ones. They're the ones inheriting this city and this country, this world, and that we are the ones tasked with being by their side day in and day out. So centralized teacher autonomy and teacher voice in the classroom, it should be the guiding light towards all policy decisions.
Well, thank you for that. Wow, powerful. Jason, let me hear your voice on this important topic here.
So one of the have we convinced you that there are some staffing problems for those of you in the audience? That being said, I really like how Siobhan put it, that she feels like she's dividing herself, and I think that all of us express that almost in the exact same words. So in addition to us just having more work to do than the time allows, I think there is an argument to be made because as much as more teachers is going to improve education, in addition to that, there is another resource that is that we can harness to meet our students' needs, and that is teacher time. There are, believe it or not, as strapped for time as teachers are, there are still times that teachers do not have the ability to choose what they do in their schedule, and as such, there is that time that can be wasted. And I've seen this in my own school, and I've seen this more than once, where teachers will meet in teams or in meetings because they have to, not because they need to, or that it actually benefits the students. So I think there is an argument to be made for giving teachers more autonomy and flexibility when it comes to their non-teaching times, to really allocate that time more effectively and most effectively to do things that are really important that can support further teacher retention, such as ongoing teacher mentoring and activities like that. And that's just the big point that I wanted to make in teacher autonomy. I think it can help put more hours and more capacity in the day by giving teachers more autonomy over their non-teaching time. And I'll end there.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Kasamira, let's end this autonomy off with you.
Okay, thank you. I feel like to get to a place where we have teacher autonomy and to get a lot of our goals with education done, we need people who are out of the classroom, in the classroom, a lot more. Like, I want my principal, my assistant principal, all our coaches, literacy coach, like Chancellor Banks, come on down. You can come to my school anytime. Like, I want people. Okay. Well, tomorrow, no. And it needs to be not so much an evaluation, but a collaboration. Like, we need to be working all together. We need people who are coming in and saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to teach this period for you, and I'm going to show you something that I want you to be doing. Because this is our leadership. Like, show us those best practices. My principal, shout out to Dr. Rosario, is like a huge responsive classroom advocate. And so when we had to change our lunchtime structure, she had each of our classes come down to cafeteria for 10-minute sections. And then she showed the kids what she wanted to see from them, following the rules of the cafeteria. So she would like hold a tray with a milk, and she's like, should I hold it with one hand or two? What if I hold it with one? Whoa, what's gonna happen? And like the kids loved it. It was so engaging and so great for another teacher to be teaching these students. And I honestly loved it. Like, I went back to my classroom because I saw it done by her and was like, okay, let me model a behavior I want with my classroom. Let me not just yell at them or whatever. Let me say, like, I'm going to show you how to stop, look, and listen, and then you're going to try it. That's best practices. That's supporting us, and such an easy fix. I mean, that doesn't cost money. We just need people who are already there to be in community with us, building those structures and focusing on the kids, which is all that matters.
Thank you. Something I value a lot, to go into the classrooms and model what a teacher lacks or show them a new style, and eventually a student will pick it up. That was one of the things I did in class. I taught math 3 different ways, and I found the one way that child can adapt, as long as we come up to the same answer and the steps are correct, adapt to the one that fits you. So that's one good way as well to show some of our best practices. Now we're going to go talk about something that I'm really passionate about, the curriculum. The curriculum. I've always had issues with some part of the curriculum, which I felt we could tweak a little. So what do you all think the role of curriculum in your schools, in the city, and how as educators can we improve that? Who I'm going to start with today? Siobhan?
I'll start. Hey. So curriculum should be viewed as a framework, giving us a stepping stone to provide our children with experiences to support their learning. I'll tell you about a way that I have been helping to support and tweak curriculum at my school. Prior to the pandemic, we were using Fontes and Pinnell, F&P, running records from here throughout the rest of the year, reading levels. And what I noticed as a teacher coming in who got a degree in early childhood education, but it wasn't a major focus on reading, not only did I struggle with instructing reading, but my children struggled with reading. And I had to think back to my childhood experience. I love to read. I had every little golden book, every little Disney book. I mean, boxes, I see head shake. Yes, I had every box. Boxes full, every book. And going to the library was my favorite pastime. How many books can I take out on my card this time? And I love to read. But then to come into kindergarten where honestly, so many skills and expectations from the older grades are slowly being pushed more and more and more to our youngest children, it's really mind-blowing to the point where when we say, let's take out our reading books, you have kindergartners that are like, I don't want to, or having full-blown tantrums. Do we want our 4 and 5-year-olds throwing tantrums around reading? Absolutely not. Not only is it something that we should enjoy, that we should love to pick up a book, the smell of a new book, or nowadays on a tablet, right? Audibles. But there should be a joy to reading. There should be a joy of getting into the characters, escaping to another world. But oftentimes, because we're using curriculums that are not developmentally appropriate, they're not taking into consideration, the brain development for the sake of trying to rush kids through skills because of these 3rd grade and 5th grade and 8th grade tests. We're putting a lot more undue stress on our children than is necessary. We're not meeting them where they are. We're trying to push them to where we want them to go. And that's going the backwards way. We need to scale back and think about, what do children typically do at this age? What skills and background knowledge do they have? And how can I use that as a foundation to move forward? So one of the things that I did last summer in teacher communities, I think I'm in more Facebook teacher groups than I'd like to admit. But I learned so much about the science of reading and different teaching strategies and different ways of instructing our youngest readers. And a lot of the things that I've learned, I've instituted this year. One being a newer curriculum focusing all on phonemic awareness. Not even looking at the graphemes and the words and phonics yet, but can children manipulate sounds that they hear? Can they hear the difference in sounds? Can they now manipulate those sounds? Those are foundational skills for then decoding that golden book that I love so much and then encoding my own story that I now want to write. That's part of the Common Core, right? So one of the things that I did was I went and I used Donors Choose, and I got a curriculum book for Haggerty, which focuses completely on phonemic awareness, and I took the liberty of starting to utilize it in my classroom. I started piloting the program, and I had conversations with my ULIT coach, and she cheered me on, and the growth that my children have had. This year, we haven't been doing F&P. We haven't been worried about, am I on level A or am I on level B? Am I on level C? Am I on level D? My friend was on level A with me in September, but now he's on level D and I'm still stuck at A. None of my children are having that undue emotional burden. None of my children are saying, I don't like to read. I created reading bags for my children with reading passages based on the phonics skills that I had been teaching this week. And I gave them these bags and I said, we're going to practice this every day. The same way Simone Biles gets up on her gymnast apparatus and she practices every day, we're going to open up these passages and books and we're going to practice reading every day. I had 3 children say, Miss Frazier, I love reading. The tears that welled up in my eyes to hear that from a kindergartner who doesn't feel stressed because I'm meeting them where they are. I'm showing them that they can and they will as long as they work for it, compared to the previous years where we're using strategies and curriculums that don't meet their needs and they're wanting to give up and I partly want to give up too. right? Because I'm kind of like, I'm being forced to use this. I know it's not working. My colleagues know it's not working. But because the powers that be above us say, well, this is what was paid for, so you must use it, we need to do away with that. Let's meet our children where they are. And part of doing that is listening to us. As we said in the very beginning, we are on the front lines. We are the ones standing in front of the classroom with the smart board. We are the ones sitting at the small group bean table with a set of 5 books. We know the challenges our children are facing, and we are meeting those challenges. Listen to us and allow us to help have that autonomy that we spoke to earlier. Now that I took the liberty of doing those steps, now I'm working with my ULIT coach and I'm helping to teach our whole K-2 team on how to use that curriculum that's meeting the needs of my students. And next year, we're all going to be using it. And we're going to see growth amongst not only just my little kindergarten class, but amongst our whole grade band. Imagine how much growth we can make as a city if we listen to our teachers and allow us to help inform those decisions and not just go because of the powers that be.
Thank you for being a teacher leader. Thank you for not giving up on our kids. And I appreciate that. That's what we do.
Those are my babies.
Shirley, can you elaborate a little bit on the curriculum?
Yeah. So as me and my colleagues discussed last week, which was enlightening, it was interesting to find that the curriculum part plays not only a role when it comes to kindergarten, but also special ed. When our students are being told to learn a certain reading skill or learn a certain math skill, and they need to know this by this date and this time, and then our students are struggling to even hold a spoon or tie their shoe, put their jackets on. They can't do any of that. But I'm telling them to now analyze a text and tell me, give me 5 facts. And they're still looking at me like, help me sit. Help me learn myself. We're still teaching some of our students how to be students. But then we're being stressed on, you need to have this reading, this reading unit done by this date. You need to, you have 3 weeks to do this. It's a stressor not on educators, but it's also a stressor on students. We need to get to a point where we understand that, okay, we're not giving up on our students, but what we're doing is making sure that we focus on the things that they need to go back into the community that we serve as educators and be the best citizens that they can be, and also be self-sufficient. If they're not able to feed themselves, do the ADL, have the ADL skills that's necessary to be independent, how can we as educators and as DOE say we've done our part in supporting that student? We need to ensure that the curriculum actually entails things that our students need to know, not only about reading and comprehension. Yes, that's important, but like my colleague Siobhan said, we need to meet our students where they are. And part of doing that is to speak to the educators that brings the instruction to the classroom to understand what exactly our students need, because that's what we're here for, to provide our students with the support that they need.
Thank you so much, Laisha. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the curriculum.
Yeah, so I too am a curriculum nerd. I really enjoy writing curriculum. It's like a passion of mine. And I think it's because I have the autonomy while teaching government and economics. There's like a really big flexibility there where I'm not teaching to a test, but I'm allowed to be responsive to things that are going on in the news, elections that take place, having entire capstone projects where kids are creating their own inquiry questions. And one that came up today was, how does education, the perception of students students in lower income communities, what's the difference between the perception and the reality of their achievements? And this came from a 12th grade student. Like, she wants to research that. So I'm allowed to have the space to build curriculum that allows kids to have those critical thinking skills, to have those kind of moments where they are now like empowered. But a lot of that kind of cuts into when do I have the time to plan this and this super responsiveness? When can I have those workshops that meet the needs of each student so they feel successful and empowered in in tackling research projects? Or when can I have those conferences where I'm asking them like specific questions about their goals that they want to reach before they leave Brooklyn Prep? So I'm always like, is it what reading, writing, discussion, things that you're going to see in the real world? Having those spaces where I can conference one-on-one and mock like office hours or even like quarterly meetings with your job in the future. So a lot of that, like I take on as wanting to make sure it's something that's engaging, something that is rigorous, which means like challenging for all students, that to a point where they feel like I did this and I'm really proud of the work I did and I see growth in that. Something that I did because I kind of love curriculum is we have a program at our school, it's student-led electives that I help pilot, where we have kids creating curriculum and leading their own electives. So I like coach kids on how they write curriculum, and so they see not just on their own by writing, creating a food for life class or creating a class that kind of tackles K-pop and East Asian cultures, like things that kids enjoy. They're writing lesson plans, they're creating assessments, they're looking at the data as a teacher and using that information to kind of assess like how they should be responding in their lessons. If this isn't working and I have a chatty class, like how do I switch my lessons around? And you can't do that with a scripted curriculum, right? You can't do that when you don't have the space or the time in your schedule to adapt to the student needs. So if we're not allowed the space or given the resources to have autonomy and model it for our students, then what are we telling them when they leave? So I kind of always say like to my kids, create whatever change you can in your sphere of influence, and I feel like I need to model that. So I think like allowing them the space to advocate for themselves within curriculum is really important. But you can't really do that if you don't have the time to connect with your students. You don't have the time to assess them on the things you know they need to know. Have them assess themselves is really important, especially when you're about to leave school. No one's going to really conference with you all the time. So being able to assess yourself and learn those skills is really important. So I think it all boils down to things that we've just been echoing, right? Like building those student relationships, creating spaces where kids feel valued, where kids feel important, where their voices are heard, where they're met at a level where they could trust us, and allowing us the trust that we know to do that. And like when we're making decisions on what does a school day look like, having what we're saying kind of at the forefront of that, I think is really important.
Thank you so much. Genevieve, how does curriculum impact you as an educator, as a pre-K educator?
So it impacts me a lot, believe it or not. We feel the pressure in pre-K. We have to get our children kindergarten ready, which to this day, please explain, I don't know what that means. Kindergarten is supposed to be ready for them. I mean, I think we agree, right? But so admin tells us, well, you know, when they go to kindergarten, no more playing. They're going to be sitting with their pen and they're just going to, you know, that's it from 8:05 to whatever time. But is that okay? Is that okay that they fear kindergarten? Parents are fearing kindergarten. What are they going to do? Oh my goodness. Oh, it was so nice here. And, you know, and they're learning even though they're playing, because, you know, play is a dirty word. It's, you know, they're playing, but it gives them the agency, what Laisha was talking about. When they're playing, they have the agency to actually go on projects and grab something and build something. I have a little girl who's, every time she sees me with cardboard, she says, Miss Quinones, keep it. I'm going to make a house. I'm going to make a robot. I'm going to make this. And so, but she decides what she wants to do. And if we have a scripted curriculum, that's not going to happen. And if we have, in pre-K, we still have centers, like block center, you know, dramatic play, or writing center, math center, all kinds of things. But I forgot my
Train of thought.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the point is that this academic being pushed down because of the testing doesn't serve our children. Children are first, and we need to get to know them in order to teach them and in order to support them. And to become more independent, to become better adjusted adults. It's a big job we have, and it's not gonna help to have scripted curriculum and parents who are really panicking about kindergarten, and is my child kindergarten ready? Is she ready? Is he ready? But she doesn't know all her letters, and well, it's okay. She just turned 4. She's 4 and something. She'll learn. It's relationships is what our job is about. Building good relationships and with the children, with their family, with the community, and that's how we support children. Not with, you're going to go 10 minutes in this center. That was my thought. You're going to go 10 minutes in this center, and then we're going to blow a whistle, and then you're going to need to change. That doesn't work. We need to give children, to know that children are competent and capable, and support them in exactly what they know to do, which is learn. Kids know how to learn. We just there to guide and facilitate.
Thank you so much for that. Now, definitely, thank you. I would definitely love to open the floor to my colleagues in government. I would love to open the floor to my partner in crime, Chancellor Banks. Any questions, my other colleagues in government as well?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep. Mic check.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you all for doing this and for sharing. I'm receiving every bit of it, as I'm sure we have 3 of our deputy chancellors who are here today as well. In fact, I'd just like each one of them to stand up. First Deputy Chancellor Dan Weisberg, our Deputy Chancellor for Teaching and Learning, Carolyn Quintana, and our Deputy Chancellor for Leadership, Dr. Desmond Blackburn. So you got the right people here, at least at the city level, and you got an important person here from the state as well. But what I wanted to challenge all of you, and maybe everybody doesn't need to respond to this question, is one of the pillars that I've tried to set out since I've become chancellor is to scale, sustain, and restore what works. There were a couple of things that came up today, but I'd love to hear what's working. What would you continue to do? What should we? I mean, it's really easy, right? I know about the things that don't work and what we need to change. But what is working in the system from your vantage point, whether it's in your school or in your district or just whatever it is that you're experiencing that is good, and we need to continue to build on that? I'd love to hear that.
I would say teacher relationships. We can't do what we do without our colleagues. As one of your people that you just mentioned came up, we talked about how at work we have work wives, work husbands, right? My teacher next door, Miss Morgan, shout out to her. We call each other work wives. We lean on each other. She needs support with something, she comes to me. I need support with something, I go to her. That relationship, that reciprocal relationship where we can strip down to our bare selves of I'm struggling, I need this, and I know that you're someone in my building that can support me with this, that's working. Being able to go to somebody, whether they're admin or not, that's working. Building that relationship, because at the end of the day, it takes a village. None of us does this work in isolation. None of us do this by ourselves. We have to continue to build on that village. And I think that is one of the most important things, and that is something that is working.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll throw 2 out there. The first, forgot the first. The second, Chancellor Banks, I actually want to shout you out because you're an advocate for music, the arts, gym, all those things. That is incredibly important, and like as a classroom teacher, I get a lot of joy of seeing how my students come alive in the different facets of their genius and their personalities that come out in those special classes, and I would just laud you and ask and signal my agreement that we should be scaling those up and integrating those even more. I remember the first. The one thing that stood out to me as a teacher that started my career in the charter school for 4 years and then came into the DOE are the union protections. And I do think those matter so much as a teacher. I didn't know what I didn't know, as I said when I started out. I was used to my prep time getting taken away at a moment's notice, having to work recess, having to work lunch. And now that I am under the union, I don't take those things for granted. And I appreciate and want to sustain those.
I just have three things that I would really like to call out, and the phrase was brought up. The answers are in the room. I don't think any of these things are radical, but they all can be scaled up, and I think dramatically help the staffing issues that we're facing as a city. Chanel mentioned that her school is building partnerships with universities here in New York City to help their staffing issues. My administration at my school is also aggressively building relationships with schools in the Bronx. That's at a school level. There's absolutely no reason that should not be at a city level, at a highly scaled up level. And potentially, state lawmakers, even at a state level, to keep New York State, potential New York State teacher candidates in the state and in the city. One of the other things that's working are the incentives to become a teacher and to become a high quality teacher and stay a high quality teacher in the system and in the city. Particularly programs like the Teaching Fellows, and this is not a plug, although they, Teaching Fellows, and which is now scaled up into the Teaching Collaborative, which has become a pseudo-residency program. Those are amazing programs that are continually refining themselves and reinventing themselves and becoming better and better and better and higher and higher and higher quality. And I see some of the deputy chancellors say, I think those are great programs that need to be further scaled up and coupled with our partnerships, our increased partnerships with our universities to make sure that we're not just getting good candidates, but making sure we're supporting them with ongoing training in that first year and even beyond. And related to that, mentoring. Teacher mentoring is working. The system is there. I had some really exceptional training. There is an office that is doing wonderful work, completely committed to improving teacher mentoring. However, there is an absolute opportunity to improve that as well because there isn't time allocated for that to happen. So that needs to be recognized when we're talking about teacher autonomy. That needs to be recognized as something that is important, that we need to prioritize, that teachers need to be given time for so that we can keep those amazing teacher candidates that we're keeping in the system and continue to support them and continue to make sure that they do not experience that burnout in their first few years.
I just want to add on to that one. I had the opportunity of doing like model teaching, and I think those programs that we had within teacher leadership I have never really had the aspirations of being like administration, but I always wanted to seek out roles in my school building where I could like create that space for teachers. And I think more opportunities for that for teachers, for us to be the experts in our building, to build those relationships, right? I think a lot of times like the best resources in my building aren't always even the teachers that teach the same content as me, but teachers who had these students the previous year and they're telling me this student really struggles with this particular skill. This student is really good at this and loves to be a leader in the class, right? So I think having the space for like allowing us to be experts in our own school, the time for us to kind of do that, as well as foster those relationships in ways that are really helpful, because I think sometimes you have like outside coaches come in, and I think that they don't know the kids, right? So I think having school-based coaches would be amazing. I think it's something we could definitely like build up and foster those positions.
Yes.
I would say another thing I think is working and has been working for, I would say, years now, and it's building off of the protections. Like, I agree, the union protects me in ways that, like, I probably wouldn't be a teacher in another state just because I wouldn't feel like I was valued and validated. But from New York City, from the DOE, I also feel validated in that, like, I can teach a lot of controversial topics in ways that are appropriate, and there's a lot of materials built from the DOE for those topics. Like, we taught about Black Lives Matter. We went through that when there were those, when there were the marches and the protests, and that was such a foundational and essential part of the school building and conversations with colleagues a few years ago, I had some pushback from administration because I had some second graders who were actually dealing with some feelings around like maybe being LGBT, and administration didn't want me to really teach the class anything about that. So I reached out to the LGBT liaison for the NYC DOE, and he was amazing. He sent me all of these things, all these protections that we had to teach those things. He sent me on a PD to learn about it. Those things make my advocate social justice heart just like warm and fuzzy.
And I think one of the other things that has sustainably been a positive in the Department of Education is the ongoing professional development that we have access to. There is a wide variety of topics, anything from behavioral to academic to systematic, that we have access to, and we often promote from one colleague to the next to make sure that we are doing the best that we can and learning as much as we can so that we prevent some of the burnout and also give our kids the high quality that they deserve.
And during the pandemic, during the pandemic, I noticed there was one thing that was added on to, was the parent university. As much as we don't promote it, I thought it was an amazing piece that was added on. I was asking for that a lot, where the parents are also learning as the students are learning, because moving over to remote learning, I remember parents stayed in the classrooms to learn too. Even though sometimes they were like 5 + 3 and they're like 8, say it, go ahead. And I'm like, Mom, I can hear you. But that piece of the parent university became very, very important. So I think we need to highlight that, uplift it in the DOE and promote it among the parents. And that's another way to get parent engagement as well.
I just want to add on, I do agree that teacher collaboration is absolutely working. And I think for me speaking personally, that is something that constantly keeps me encouraged day in and day out. Of course, I go there every day for my students, but the days where I feel, the stress or I feel the lack of anything, I know that my colleagues are there to provide that support. And I think that it's essential to us all being the great and passionate educators that we are, is that we know that we have someone to turn to and that the support is always going to be there.
Wonderful.
I was going to add something about partnership with parents. I think that is working, and it's working, and it needs to be expanded on with initiatives like you were talking about, and also not thinking that parents can always participate in the same fashion because our parents are working, or I have a family, the dad works at night, the mom works during the day, and so they cannot always be there for school things that we do online even at night. So, but they participate in different ways, and so I think being more inclusive with the ways of participation for parents, I think that would be great. Just
Thank you.
think of all the parents.
Senator Jackson, how are you?
Good afternoon. My
You're
name
on.
is Robert Jackson. I'm a state senator, and I chair the education committee. I used to chair the education committee in city council for 8 years, and I'm on the 3 committees at the state level, meaning the New York City Education Committee, the Education Committee, and Higher Education Committee. And first, let me just thank all of you for coming out and speaking at this panel, which was very, very refreshing to hear all of you giving your opinions and thoughts about curriculum and other ways of socializing with our students. And but what I was wondering, and some of the issues and concerns that you have, do you have active school leadership teams in your buildings in order to discuss the issues and concerns that you are having as individual teachers, or overall with particular grades or the entire building, things like that? Because obviously that's where not only the principal, but you have UFT representatives on school leadership team, CSA, and parents and activists speaking about the issues and concerns in order to how to address those. So I was wondering about that, and you don't have to respond, but you can respond in your mind and then say it so I can hear it. But also knowing that the budget is $220 billion,
Yes.
it should be no reason. Hello? Mike? Chief
Mic check.
$220 billion. It should be no issue in getting what supplies you need or even hiring more teachers. DOE, obviously under new Chancellor Banks, has to do better, even if we have to raise the level of pay in order to recruit educators. I'm telling you, because the most important thing that we have to do is to educate our children in order to be our future leaders of our great state and our country. So let me thank you for your service.
Thank
And
you.
if you can answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Jackson.
Now, if I might go back into teaching.
We'll both go back.
So I'm Assemblymember Joanne Simon from Brooklyn. Hi, Rita. And so I was really fascinated by some of your comments. And, you know, I was trained as a preschool teacher of the deaf, but I also ended up teaching a lot of kids with multiple disabilities. So a lot of the conversation you were having was something that really resonated for me. But also this issue about teaching reading and the science of reading. And I was so glad you brought that up. And so one of the things that has been a concern for me, and I have a bill for that, is the way our teacher preparation programs are teaching our pre-service teachers or not to teach reading. And I'm curious if you could talk about the ways you were taught to teach reading and whether that's been helpful, what you've struggled with. I don't know if that you have a similar issue to the one that Siobhan mentioned, but I was very grateful to hear you talk about phonemic awareness and the need to actually go back to the basics of language going forward. So I'm just curious if you could reflect on that in your own experiences and then tell me what it is I need to do at the state legislature to change that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I wasn't. I'll be frank. I went to a private school for my undergrad, and then I went to a city college for my graduate degree. And at the undergrad level, you are taught mostly philosophies and theories and kind of a lot of child development. And when it comes to your literacy classes, you tend to focus more on oral comprehension and picture books and kind of the theories that go well with teaching reading. But there is no explicit reading instruction. A lot of times when we say reading, people assume that children are picking up a book and digesting what's being said. But there is no introduction into what Siobhan had said earlier about the importance of children being able to manipulate phonemes without the written word, without the grapheme being present, the ability to rhyme, the ability to process language as it's coming at them. And there is no phonemic awareness or phonics instruction. There is no real comprehension instruction either. And this is something that needs to significantly change, and also part of the reasons why I want student teachers to be so heavily in our classrooms so that they get exposure to this from veteran teachers who are able to show them what they need to know so that teaching reading isn't so scary. You know, we tie this into the curriculum piece with the variety in curriculum and the need for explicit curriculum in some areas. And when you are dealing with phonemic awareness, phonics, the foundation of learning how to read, explicit curriculum is definitely needed, but we need to prepare incoming teachers at the lower level before they even step foot into a classroom.
My experience went to two wonderful schools, one SUNY and one private. However, being birthed to two early childhood certified in gen ed as well as special ed, again, it was more of a general overview. Like, I wasn't required to take a reading specific course unless I was going to get a degree or certificate in reading. And those courses, then I would hope, gotten more of that. But because I did early childhood, it gave the child development and like the overview, create materials, etc. And as I mentioned before, a lot of what I know now and the teaching practices I'm engaging in now came from fellow teachers, came from a Science of Reading Facebook group that I joined during the pandemic, where I saw somebody comment on something. I'm like, that sounds interesting. Level A, the kids shouldn't memorize. They shouldn't guess at the pictures. Maybe they should know the phonics patterns of the word, so they're not pointing and guessing. And then that made me think of my students, where I was like, so this kid who, a picture of someone kicking a ball, it could be kick, it could be catch, it could be 6 different things. They're struggling and they're frustrated. This is why. But now that I have that background now from my own learning and research and collaboration, I can do better. So I do thank you for bringing that up. And I do think we do need to go back and not have reading be an overview course. But if you're going to be working in the classroom, you should have reading specific courses that go into detail, because it's not only important for the children to know and understand how to read and why it's important, but it's also important for us to have that background knowledge of even just the English language. English is complicated. We think learning other languages is complicated, but English is very, very complicated. So we should have that foundation.
Can I add something on there?
Absolutely.
All right. I would throw this in the category of things that are working and that we can scale up. Because in my school in the last few years, all I had to offer my school, my 4th graders, was the MSV, the queuing system that we all know is not best practice. Research does not show that it grows readers and grows children who can decode text. Now, K through 2 is fully invested in Haggerty, in Foundations and Other Phonics program. We also have those programs as interventions in 3 through 4 for our students who have dyslexia or other learning disabilities and need that extra support. It is working. So I would also say just look to what's happening into the city, to the folks who are responsible for that, because we can scale that up, and it's really exciting to see.
Thank you. I think we have a question. Hi.
Thank you.
Mic
Good
check.
evening.
Good evening.
Speak closer. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Lester Young, and I currently serve as the Chancellor for the New York State Board of Regents. I'm joined this afternoon with my colleague on the board, Judith Chin, who chairs the P12 committee and also the assessment work group. So like what my colleague, Chancellor Banks, said, you have the right people here, at least from the state. And I wanted to just say a couple of things. Number one, how much I learned from being here. And I appreciated the comment about centering teachers in the policy discussion. We're learning how to do that better. You know, that's primarily our role. And like you, I think that comment you made about the sacred ones, I actually think, like you, that children should be a protected class. And I think if we thought about children as a protected class, some of these things that we talked about as challenges wouldn't be there. For example, you know, it breaks my heart when I hear someone say that there are young people going into classrooms and there are not enough chairs, or the chairs are broken, or, you know, they're not balanced. And when I think about that, I think about what does that say to our young people? You know, what does that say about their sense of belonging and their valuing, et cetera? So we get that. The other couple of points that I would make is you talked about assessment. We talk about assessment often, you should know. We are currently trying to think through how do we have a New York State assessment strategy that makes sense? Because we recognize that just having the end of year test in grades 3 through 8 or the Regents exams without getting into a lot of dialogue about it, we know that those aren't adequate predictors of future success. And they're certainly not adequate predictors of what our young people know and can do. And so we have to have a strategy, a statewide strategy that not only provides teachers with better information, but also parents. Because right now, you know, all across the state, you know, parents are asking us the question, what's going to happen this year, right? I'm certain there are people here who want to know what's going to happen. And we're trying, but believe it or not, we're right now in the midst, and one of the reasons why we haven't come up with an answer is because we're trying to collect information from all across the state as to what should we do. You may know we requested a waiver. The U.S. Office of Education denied our waiver. And so we right now are trying to think through what is our strategy going to be. So as soon as that happens, we will let you know. But I just wanted you to know how heartened I was to hear all of you today. And as we go forward, we will be thinking about more ways that we can center teachers in the policy discussion in New York State. Thank you.
Any other questions? No. That was Assemblymember Simon. So I just really want to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for showing up for our students. As I told you, my journey before becoming a city council member, I taught for 22 years. I taught up until December 23rd because I love my students. I campaigned in the morning. I taught in the morning and I campaigned in the afternoon. Yes, I did. I taught in the morning on virtual learning, on Google Classroom, and I campaigned in the afternoon because I wanted to be there for my students because we have never experienced a pandemic like this before. So I had to be there. I had to make sure they had food on their table. I had to make sure they had resources. And as an ENL coordinator, I had to make sure they were getting the information in the language that is spoken at home. So that was even more important to me. So today I stand with you as your colleague. Now I'm in the council. I have your voice. You have a teacher at the table who has your voice, who walked in your shoes before. So I can make teacher-centered policies around what I'm hearing. And Chancellor Bank and I, we visit schools a lot. We're listening to the teachers on the ground. We want to know what their needs are, and we're coming in to make sure we're making changes in partnership with Michael as well, my new partner, my other partner, to make sure, and my state colleagues, thank you for having my back, and I call on you guys whenever I need you to make sure you have my voice in the state. And we go, city and state, we're working together and working with other partnerships. So I thank each and every one of you tonight. I hope to visit your school to see all the amazing work that you're doing. And thank you again for joining us tonight.